Nice to start another semester at Livnos, and we're going to be learning Rashi uh, on the preceding from the preceding Shabbos from yesterday. So we will start. I'll do things in order. In general, if I have something new to say, that's something that I thought of, that I noticed that past Shabbos, I'll say it because it's always good to say something over that's fresh. You say it over with enthusiasm, and you also, uh, while you're saying it over, you might you're still in critical mode. You haven't accepted it as part of as something that you're sure of, and it's good to say it over, get it clear to yourself. So, with that in mind, we are going to start from Perek Yud Aleph, Pasuk Yud Ches. So I'm going to give you some background here. So let me read the pasuk in isolation, and then we'll look at it in the big picture. So this is Moshe Rabbeinu addressing Paro. This is the conclusion of his warning that Makas Bechoros is next on the list and is about to happen. So Moshe Rabbeinu concludes his warning with this pasuk. And all these subjects of yours are going to come down to me, vishtachavuli, and they are going to bow to me, lemor, saying, say, get out of here. Atov v'chol ha'am asher b'raglecha, you and all the people who follow you. V'acharechein eitzei, and afterwards I will leave. He predicts, Paro, you're going to come begging me to leave. Vayetze me'im paro b'chari af. Okay, registered, and thank you for letting me know. Vayetze me'im paro b'chari af. So Moshe Rabbeinu departed from before Paro in a state of anger. So let's see the Rashi here. The last Rashi, I'm going to talk a little bit about the earlier Rashi on the pasuk in a few minutes, but let's talk about the very last Rashi. Vayetze me'im paro b'chari off. He left from before Paro in a state of anger. So Rashi says, b'chari off, in a state of anger, al she'amar lo, because for Paro having said to him, al tosef ra'os ponai, do not continue to see my face. So let's backtrack a little bit. Let's see what Rashi's referring to. The warning to Paro about Makas Bechoros begins earlier. Just a second. Yeah. When Paro asks Moshe Rabbeinu to appear before him at the at the end of to end the plague of darkness, plague number 9. So that's back in Perek Yud, Pasuk Chaf Daled. It says Vayikra Paro el Moshe. So Paro relents after the plague of darkness. He says, go for your 3-day celebration, take your sacrifices. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, no. It's not just me and the adult men who are going to go. You're going to give us, we're going with everybody, and you're going to give us cattle to sacrifice. And then Paro said, let's go skip to Pasuk Chavches. Vayomer lo Paro, after Moshe Rabbeinu increased his demands, he says, you're going to give us cattle sacrifice. You're letting everybody go, not just the adult men. Vayomer lo Paro, Perek Yud Pasuk Chavches. So Paro said to Moshe, Lech mi alai, get away from me. Hishamar lecha, watch out. Al tosef for os panai, don't come to see my face again. You'll never, don't have any audience with me. Ki biyom re'oscha panai tamus. because on the day that you see my face, you will die. If you show up here, you're dead. Vayomer Moshe, and Moshe said to him, Kain dibarta. That's right. Lo osif od os panecha. I'm not going to come to have any audience with you anymore. Now, Perik Yud Aleph begins with HaKadosh Baruch Hu telling Moshe that there's going to be one more plague, and after this plague, the people are going to be begging you to leave, and they're going to give you things just to get out of there. That's the first three psukim of Pasuk of Perik Yud Aleph. Now, at Revi'i, we have Moshe Rabbeinu continuing to talk to Paro. Vayomer Moshe, Ko Amar Hashem. Moshe says, so says Hashem, Kachatzos halayla, when it's exactly midnight, and Yotzei Besoch Mitzrayim, I just took one side in Rashi, but that's not what we're going to talk about. But at midnight, I'm going to go out in Mitzrayim, Umeis Kol Bechor Be'eretz Mitzrayim, and every firstborn is going to die in Eretz Mitzrayim, and you have a few psukim here describing the plague and how the Egyptians are going to be screaming, and not even the Jewish dogs are going to be disturbed, and Hashem is going to draw a great distinction between the Jewish people and the Mitzrim, and then at the conclusion of this whole speech, is the pasuk we read, and your slaves are going to come begging me to get out of here, and then he left Bechori off. But there's a problem with the structure of this. And at the end of pasuk Yud, when Moshe Rabbeinu increased his demands of Paro, said, you're going to give us cattle, you're going to let us all go. Paro said, get away from here. If you ever show up here again, I'm going to kill you. And Moshe said, that's right, I'm not going to see your face anymore. And you think Moshe Rabbeinu left. But then you have Hashem talking. This next plague, the Egyptians are going to beg you to leave. And then Pasuk Daled, Moshe Rabbeinu is still talking with Paro. So Rashi deals with this structural problem. And he says Moshe Rabbeinu didn't leave right after Pasuk Chavtes. When Moshe Rabbeinu said, Kain dibarta, what you said is right, I'm not going to see your face anymore, he didn't leave at that point. Hashem informed him that the next plague, the Egyptians are going to beg you, and that's while Moshe was standing there. And then Moshe tells Paro, before he leaves, after he said, I'm never going to see you again, but before he leaves, he tells him, at midnight, you're going to have the most dreadful plague of them all. And then he says, he concludes, you're going to come beg me to get out of here. Your slaves are going to come and beg me to get out of here. And then he left angrily. Okay, that's all background. So let's read the Rashi again that we started with. Vayetzei me'im paro b'chari off. He left from before Paro in a state of anger. Al she'omer lo al tosif ra'os ponai, for having said to him, don't continue to see me again. On the surface, this is a difficult Rashi. Based on a rule in Rashi that my friend Rav Yochanan Moshe Yosef wrote at length on, that is, Rashi, unless people, not just people, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and people do lots of things in Tanakh. And usually, Tanakh doesn't explain why, it just says what happened. And even that, it's very sparing. A lot of details that you'd think should be there are left out. Some of them are filled in by Rashi and the Rashim. But the text of Rashi, the text of Tanakh is very, very concise. And usually motives for why people do things aren't mentioned. But Rashi sometimes supplies the motives. So the rule that Rabbi Joseph articulates so in great detail and I'm convinced he is right, is that motives are Rashi said in a few places that his agenda in his Perush on Tanakh is Pishuto Shel Nikra, which means the simple meaning of the text. Textual problems. Why does the Torah say something obscure? Why does the Torah say something that in many words when it could have said them in a few words? Why did Hashem do what he did? Why do people do what they do? Those are interesting questions. Those are valuable questions for us as Jews to have answered because we do learn things from motives. But that's not Rashi's subject. Look in the Midrashim. Look at the other Meforshim. Rashi is interested only in textual questions. So this Rashi, Bachari off. Moshe was left in anger. So let's look at what he's doing. Al Sha'amar lo al Tosef Ra'os Panai. Why was he angry? Because Paro had told him, don't continue to see my face. Right? That's why. That's not what? What is clear? He left angrily. Okay. The Torah is not dealing with the motive for that. So why should Rashi, who's only interested in textual problems that you can link to the words in front of you, why is he interested in why? We can ask why about Rashi, but Rashi shouldn't be answering why about an action that Moshe Rabbeinu did. Okay, so I came up with an answer to this question over Shabbos, but in my preparation for this class, I saw another answer that I liked in one of the classical Meforshim on Rashi, and that is the Sefer Divrei David, written by someone who we know better as a posek than as a commentator on Rashi. He's known by his commentary on parts of Shulchan Aruch, the Taz, Turei Zahav. He wrote an extensive commentary. I don't know if he wrote it on all the 4 portions of Shulchan Aruch. Certainly he wrote it on Orach Chaim, and it's a very authoritative halachic opinion. If there's a halachic question arises and the Taz deals with it, the poskim are going to mention that Taz. They might agree with him, they might disagree with him, but they're not going to ignore him. He's a very big posek. But he also wrote a very nice Perush on Rashi. So he doesn't ask the question the way I asked it. Why does Rashi get into the motive? He's just asking why is Moshe Rabbeinu? Well, I guess he's not making a rule out of it, but he's asking why does Rashi see fit to mention the motive here? And the answer that he gives is, I think, satisfying based on Rav Joseph's standards. The rule is whenever Rashi mentions a motive and it looks like he's answering the question, why did he do that? He's always really explaining the wording. Somehow, unless you say that the pasuk is alluding to the motive for the action, there's a problem with the wording. And I think the Divrei David is using that method here. He explains the following. I gave you this long introduction about how the structure of this parsha is. Rashi just tells you what the structure is. He doesn't explain why the parsha is structured this way. Remember, first, Paro said, end this plague of Choshech. And Moshe Rabbeinu did. And he said, now let us go into to the wilderness to celebrate to Hashem, bring karbanos, and everybody's going to go. And Paro says, no, just the adults. And Moshe says, no, everybody, And not only that, you're going to supply us with animals to slaughter and offer to Hashem. And then Paro blows his stack. It says, get out of here. If you show up here again, you're going to die. And Moshe says, you don't have to worry about that. I'm never going to show up here again. And then we have a break. Hashem tells Moshe, I am going to inflict the plague on the Egyptians. That they won't know what hit them, and they're going to be begging you to leave. The break is over. And Moshe Rabbeinu is still in front of Pharaoh, and he hasn't left yet. And then he tells him all about how horrible the upcoming Makas Bechoros is going to be. And then he concludes with this pasuk you're talking about, and your slaves are going to come begging me to leave, and then I'm going to go. And then it says he left Paro angrily. Well, the Divrei David, he says, I mean, he asks, why does Rashi say that he was angry about Paro's earlier threat? Don't come see my face. You come to me again, you're going to die. He says that was a long time ago. And that speech, it sounds like it was interrupted with a statement of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And now we start a new speech. And you look at this new speech, let me just briefly go over the content of the Psukim again. It begins, Pasuk Daled. There Moshe says, Hashem warns Paro in advance. Hashem says, I'm going to go out over Egypt at midnight tonight. Every single Bechor is going to die, except for Paro himself. The whole land's going to be screaming. There's never going to be anything like it. And the Jewish people, even their dogs are going to be safe. Hashem is going to draw a clear distinction, and then you are going to come down here and beg me to go. And he says, when you look, David says, there's nothing angry about this. This last speech of Moshe, he was just telling Paro, this is what's happening. He didn't insult him. He didn't start shouting at him for disobedience. Why did it say he left in anger? He hadn't been angry. So Rashi says, you're only asking that question because you lost track. Because the Torah interrupted in the middle of Moshe's speech. Before the second half of the speech, Paro threatened Moshe. And that was chutzpah. And Moshe hadn't forgotten about that. He hadn't left yet. And that was, because you're thinking, B'choriyov, it doesn't belong here. It's not just, why was he angry? It's, you look at what's going on before, there's nothing to be angry about. The text seems to say that he wasn't angry. But he says, no, you're not looking back far enough. You're letting this break in the narrative of Moshe's audience in front of Paro. You're going to forget that Paro threatened him. And that's what Bechori Af is referring back to. That's the Divrei David's Pshat and Rashi. And I like it. I think it's a nice Pshat. But I think I have a simpler Pshat. And it's always possible that Rashi had both problems in mind and even more problems that nobody has thought of yet, or at least none of the swarm I looked at have. But I want to give a simple answer. This Bechori Af, Moshe left angrily, should strike people who have been following the story as problematic. Because if you're learning Parshas V'Eira and Parshas Bo, and here you've gotten to the 10th plague, I think, this is my assumption, that your first impression, why is Moshe angry? You, the reader, the student, I should say, sees this pasuk, and all right, it's not a pshat question, but you have every right to ask to yourself, what's going on here? What's Moshe angry about? And your first impression is going to be, he's angry at Paro for being disobedient. I think that will be everybody's first impression. And then you're going to ask the question, this isn't the first time Paro's been disobedient. This happens to be the 10th time that Paro's been disobedient. So presumably Moshe was upset with Paro 10 times. So why does the Torah only tell you the last time? It should have said it the first time, and maybe then you'll figure out for the rest of the times, or it should have said it all 10 times. But why only is the last time? If disobedience is a cause for anger, presumably it happened earlier. So why is the Torah mentioning it only now? So Rashi answers, that's not what he was angry about. In fact, he was expecting it. He was angry at the threat. The person, get out of here. I don't ever want to see you again. You're going to die. That's not the way you talk to Moshe Rabbeinu. That's what Rashi's answering. Okay, that's the first point I want to deal with in this week's Parsha. We might come back to this pasuk, we might not. I'm going a little bit slower than I thought I would. I'm going to skip around, not going to go in order. Let's go to Perek Yud Beis, Pasuk Yud Zayin.
I just have a quick question for the
Yes,
Rav.
yes.
I don't know, to me, it just seems a little petty for Moshe, like all of a sudden to get personally insulted. There's so many bigger issues here. Like Paro's wants to kill out this whole nation, and you're personally insulted because he said, "I don't want to see you again." Sounds a drop petty for Moshe Rabbeinu.
I accept the question. I don't have an answer off the cuff, although I would disagree with you on one small point that you made, and that you said the people are being killed. That stopped. That stopped already. The people, in terms of their personal safety, they're out of danger, at least from Paro.
Right, I'm
Okay,
just saying after the whole
but still,
history, right,
Moshe Rabbeinu taking it personally, he's not the kind of person you'd think takes things personally.
right,
I
exactly.
accept that as a question. I don't have an off-the-cuff answer. Maybe if I remember, I'll come up with something by next week. But
Okay, thanks,
feel
Sarah.
free to send me an email sometime during the week to remind me of the question because I'm liable to forget it, even though
Okay,
as good
thanks.
as it is. Okay, so now let's go to Perek Yud Beis, Pasuk Yud Zayin. No, excuse me. I want to go to Yud Beis Chof Beis. Yud Beis Chof Beis. Okay. This is when Moshe Kadosh Baruch Hu was, right before he brings Makas Bechoros. So he tells the Jewish people that to protect themselves, they have to daub this herb Azov in blood of an animal that they shechted of the Korban Pesach, and smear the blood on the doorposts and on the lintels. Okay, let me read the pasuk and I'll read one of the Rashis. Pasuk Chaf Beis. Ulekachtem agudas Azov. You should take a bunch of Azov. It's translated as hyssop. I think it's zatar. That's what we call it. Utavaltem badom asher basaf, and you should dip it into the blood that's in the basin that you've collected that's gushing out of the korban that you just shechted. V'higatem el hamashkof ve'el shtei hamezuzos min hadom asher basaf, and you should touch the lintel and the two upright doorposts from the blood which was on this azov that you dipped in the basin. Va'atem lo seitzu, and you should not go outside. Ish, any man, mi pesach beso, out of the entrance to his house, ad bokir, until the morning. So you've got two mitzvos, not one of the 613, only mitzvos that only applied in that time and place in this pasuk. Dip the azov in blood and put the blood with the azov on the doorposts, and then don't go outside tonight. So let's look at Rashi on the last mitzvah in the pasuk, the very last comment of Rashi on the pasuk. Va'atem lo seitzu, you should not go out, v'gomer, etc. Magid, this pasuk tells us, Shemeachar shenitna reshus lemashchis lechabel, once the destroying force has permission to injure, eino mavchin bein sadik l'rasha. It does not distinguish between a righteous person and a rasha. In other words, Hashem said that the mashchis, the destroying force, is going to destroy Mitzrayim. I'm not going to take the time to look up the pasuk, but he does use that term. So once the destroying forces are on the loose, everybody has to watch out. Even people who are not worthy of being punished by death shouldn't put themselves in a risky situation. And then Rashi brings support that that this idea is not it's not something that he made up or the Chazal made up. It has a source in Tanakh. He goes on. V'layla, and nighttime in general, reshus lemachablimhu. It's a time when injurious forces are free to do what they want to do, what they naturally do. Shenemar, bo in it, in the night, tirmos kol chaiso ya'ar. All the beasts of the field creep around. Animals are on the loose at night. When people are there, it's the nature of animals, even deadly animals, it's their nature to be scared of people. When people are in their houses, they only come out at night, as they say. Okay. So, what's Rashi saying? He's saying that this atem lo teitzu, you should not go out. The reason is, since there is a deadly force out there which is going to kill Egyptians, even though you don't deserve to be killed, it's the Egyptians who are doing the Averos, don't press your luck. Stay indoors, because once there's a perilous situation outside, even people who don't deserve punishment run a risk. Oh, the Hashkafa questions there about Hashem's justice, I'm not even going to touch over here. But I want to do two things. There was a new Sefer published 2 weeks ago, where one of the great masters, experts in Rashi in today's generation, wrote a Sefer. He's put up lots of things. Rav Moshe Philip, who I don't know if he still teaches at Micholah, but for many, many years he taught Tanakh, and I'm sure he specialized in Rashi, at Micholah, and he put out really good editions, annotated editions of the early Meforshim on Tanakh. So he put out a new book, a new Sefer, in which he collected in one place, in one volume, all of Ramban's comments on Rashi. And it is a very handy Sefer. It really is very convenient, because I just bought it. I looked at it a little bit. He says, and I didn't realize this, 30% of Ramban al HaTorah is a discussion of Rashi. 30%. Can you imagine how much Ramban has to say about Rashi? But people don't pick it up because, till I find what he says on Rashi, and most of the big questions he has on Rashi, Mizrahi deals with. Somehow, I'm sure this Sefer is going to change people's approach to studying Rashi and making Ramban a much more popular source. So, in the spirit of this Sefer, let me tell you Ramban's problem with this Rashi. He says, well, if Hashem is telling us, don't go outdoors, he's telling the people in Mitzrayim, don't go outdoors because the mashchis is out there, and the mashchis doesn't distinguish between tzaddik and rasha. And then he says, and nighttime is a time of danger, because the pasuk in Borchi Nafshi, At nighttime, all the beasts of the forest are on the loose, and they're creeping around. Well, he says, if that's true, you shouldn't be allowed to go out any night because the wild animals are out there. They feel free, right? So, okay. Now, that's a good question. But there's a more fundamental question, and I didn't look at everything I have here in my house in all the Meforshim, but it's the fundamental question in Rashi. The first question in Rashi is whenever you were learning Rashi, what did Rashi say? Good. You know what Rashi said? You've gotten something, and if you feel like stopping there and going on to the next pasuk, next Rashi, fine. But if you want to get a little bit of a deeper understanding on Rashi, the second question you ask, and this is accepted method among all the Meforshim, is what is it about the text that Rashi is clarifying? Or as Dr. Bonchek immortalized the phrase, what's bothering Rashi? And I don't see the Meforshim, at least I must have looked at 7 or 8 of them. I don't see them dealing with it. So let me just give you a few seconds to think about that. What's bothering Rashi? It's another one of those questions. I can phrase it like the way I phrased the early one. It's a why question. Why shouldn't he go out? You don't go out because it's dangerous. But why questions aren't pshat questions. So there's got to be a textual question here. What is it? So I'll tell you what I think it is. And I think if we explain this textual question, we will also have an answer to Ramban's question. If you're not supposed to go outside because it's dangerous outside, well, Rashi says every night it's dangerous outside, at least if you live in an area that's bounded by wilderness. So the textual question, va'atem lo seitzu, is there's an extra word there. The pasuk could have just said the beginning of the pasuk: take the azov, dip it into the blood, daub the blood on the doorposts. V'lo seitzu ishmi pasach beitzo, and no man should go out of his house. And you lo teitzu. What's the and you telling us? So I think Rashi is answering it this way, and this will also take care of Ramban's question. Had the pasuk not said v'atem lo teitzu, had it just said v'lo teitzu ish mipasach beiso, I would have said there's for some reason, who knows, who cares what. Important thing is this is what Hashem wants. For some reason, Hashem said, don't go outdoors tonight. And that wouldn't have been a problem. There's no textual question. There's no philosophical question. Why does Hashem want that? We'll leave that to the Ramban or to whoever wants to deal with it. But it's not a problem with the wording. The wording is very clear. And furthermore, the wording has no implications for anybody other than the Jewish people who are about to leave Egypt. You people, tonight, don't go outdoors. Does that have any practical implications for me and you? No, no, at least not any that are immediate. But the Vatem says, you know what the Vatem is telling you? Magid, that the Vatem is telling you a law of nature, a law of supernature. This Atem is telling you there's a general rule here that applies to everybody. When injurious forces are given free rein, are given freedom, everybody, even the biggest city, can have to be careful. How do I see that? You shouldn't go outdoors. Now, that implies that if I hadn't have said you shouldn't go outdoors, there's a reason that other people might think they shouldn't go outdoors, that's forbidden to go outdoors, right? People might think, if it makes a point of saying you may not go outdoors, it's telling you that's only for you. Other people are allowed to. There's a chiddush that other people are allowed to. What kind of chiddush is there that other people are allowed to go outdoors? Why not? If Hashem has to say, you you can, excuse me, you mustn't, but Hashem has to say openly, but other people can, that's because there's a reasonable reason for people to say you can't. It's dangerous out there. Hashem's saying, you're right. It's dangerous out there. And you got to be very careful. Use your judgment. But there's no isser from the Torah to walk out at night, even though it really is dangerous. You people in Mitzrayim may not. Other people, be careful. That's implied by the pasuk. Okay? So that would answer, that's a textual question, and it also gives us a reading in the Rashi that answers the Ramban's question. Why other times we're allowed to go outdoors at night, even though there is a risk. Yeah, so you're not allowed to take foolish risks. But sometimes, listen, if you're living in an urban area, no, the risk isn't from animals. There might be other risks, but not from animals. And sometimes, if there's no isser, if there's no lav doraisa, if there's an urgent reason to go out, even in a dangerous place, there might be compelling reasons, and you're allowed to. It's not like a say say or something like that. It's use your judgment. Okay. Now I'm going to tell you another word that really it involves the parsha, but it involves a lot of parshios. Let's go back to the pasuk we began with, Perek Yud Aleph, pasuk Ches, pasuk that we talked about before, and I'm going to talk about a different issue there. Yeah, Moshe Rabbeinu's last words to Paro before he departs Paro's palace for good. V'yardu chol avodecha ela elai. All these slaves of yours are going to come down to me. V'ishtachavuli, and they're going to bow to me. Lemor saying, Tsei ata v'chol ha'am asher b'rachlecha, get out of here, you and all the people who follow you. V'acharei chein say, and after you beg, I will go. And then Vayitzei in Paro v'chayrof, he departed from Paro angrily. So let's learn the first Rashi on this pasuk now. V'yardu chol avodecha. All of your slaves are going to come down. Chilek kavod lemalchus. Moshe Rabbeinu accorded honor to royalty. Shaharei basof, because in the end, Yarad Paro ba'atzmo elov balayla. It was Paro himself who came down to Moshe Rabbeinu at night. V'amar, and he said to Moshe Rabbeinu, Kumu mitoch ami. Get up and get out from among my people. V'lo amar lo Moshe mitchila v'yaradato elai v'ishtachavisali. And Moshe did not say to him initially, you will come down and bow to me. So Moshe Rabbeinu was not speaking to Paro directly. What he meant was, you yourself are going to come beg me to leave. But it's disrespectful even when you're angry, and even when the king's a mechutzaf and a rasha, you have to speak honorably to a king, not because he deserves it, because his position deserves it. So Moshe used a euphemism. He didn't say, you're going to come down to me, which is what he meant. He said, your slaves are going to come down to me. So I'm going to talk now a little bit about the Rashi's discussion of this general topic of according honor to royalty. So you see these sources that I gave you. I'm going to the first source I see. I'm not going to get to tonight. Look at source the Vayugad Liakov. It was told to Moshe, to Yaakov. This is the Parshas Vayechi, the beginning of Parshas Vayechi, when Yosef and his sons come to see Yaakov Avinu, and he's approaching death. Vayugad Liakov. It was told to Yaakov that Moshe and his two sons have come. Vayomer, and he said, oh, whoever was talking said, Hine bin Yosef bo elecha. Look, your son Yosef has come to you. Vayischazek Yisrael, and Israel drew upon his strength. He exerted himself. Vayeshev al hamitah, and he sat up on the bed. So I'll read to you the Rashi. Vayischazek Yisrael. All right, I left out a vow there. Amar, he said, Yisrael said to himself, Af al pi shehu bani, although he is my son, and he's the one who should be making shows of respect towards me rather than the other way around. Melechu, nevertheless, he is a king. V'achlok lo kavod, and I will accord him honor. Mikan, from here we learn, shecholkin kavod l'malchus, that we must accord honor to royalty, whether the individual occupying the position is personally worthy or not. V'chein, here's our pasuk. Likewise, Moshe chilek kavod l'malchus. Moshe accorded honor to royalty. Rashi cites the pasuk we've been discussing. V'yardu kol avadecha ela elai. All these slaves of yours are going to come down to me, when everybody knew he meant you're going to come down. V'chein Eliyahu. And Eliyahu also showed honor to royalty when Achav, who's one of the worst kings the Jewish people have ever had, when there was a drought, a 3-year drought in his day, and after Eliyahu had the people slaughter the 400 priests of the Baal who were hired by Achav, so eventually there was first a few clouds appeared in the sky, then it started raining, and then there was this tremendous rain. And Eliyahu tells before the rain started, Eliyahu told Achav, hitch your chariot and hurry back to Shomron before you get drenched. And then it says, Vayeshanes Mosnov. Eliyahu, yeah, well, he girded his loins. I think that means he tightened his belt, but it's a figure of speech that means he drew upon his strength, parallel to Vayischazek Yisrael. He drew upon his strength and he ran ahead of Achav's horse-drawn chariot the entire distance from Hara Carmel to Shomron, which has got to be something like 20 miles. So it was a miracle. So, just structurally, all right, so what's the pshat problem? Why does the Torah make a point of saying that Yisrael exerted himself to sit on the bed? What do I care if it was hard for him or not? It wasn't hard for him. Probably it was hard for him. He was an old man, and we see he's very close to death. But why does the Torah make a point of stating that? Well, it teaches us something. That's the proper thing to do when you're in the presence of a king. You show a king honor, even though Yosef was the son, and there's even a bigger chiyuv for the child to show honor to the parent. Nevertheless, when the son is a king, the parent makes a show of honor to the child. And Rashi says, Rashi, he's a teacher. He says, don't just trust me. I have precedence for this. Look, Moshe Rabbeinu did the same thing with Paro. Eliyahu Navi did the same thing with Achav. He brings a proof to support his explanation for why the Torah says that Israel exerted himself. So my question is the following. Before I tell you what my question is, let me just find the source I'm going to quote you. It's in Perek Hay of Sefer Shmos. It's the first time that Moshe and Aaron appear before Paro. Hang on one second. This is the very first time Moshe and Aaron appear before Paro. And in the preceding pasuk, uh, in pasuk Aleph, they come to Paro and they said, Hashem wants you to set us, to send us away to celebrate to him in the Midbar. And Paro answers in a very chutzpahdik way. I'm going to listen to Hashem. I don't know, but I know lo yadati es Hashem. V'gam es Yisrael lo ashaleach. And then listen to what Moshe and Aaron say. Vayomru, they said, Elokei ha'ivrim nikro aleinu. The God of the Ivrim happened upon us or summoned us. Neilcha na derech shloshes yamim. We're going to go, let us go now a 3-day journey, Bamidbar, v'nizbechol Hashem Elokeinu, and bring korbanos to Hashem, pen yifka'enu badever ovechorev, lest he strike us with disease or with the sword. That's not a threat. You better do this or I'm going to get punished. That's not the way you pressure people. That's Rashi's problem. Let's read the Rashi on that. Pen yifka'enu, lest he strike us. Pen yifka'cha hayutzrichim lomar. They should have said, lest he strike you, because they meant to threaten him. Ela shechalku kavod lemalchus, but they accorded honor to royalty. Okay, that's just enough. The next part of the Rashi is not nogea. So here is my question, my first question. The Rashi we just learned about Yaakov Avinu. The Torah makes a point of saying he exerted himself to sit up and show respect to Yosef because he was a king. And Rashi says, I know you're thinking that's a big chiddush, but it's not such a big chiddush. You find it. It's a common practice. Moshe Rabbeinu did it. Eliyahu Navi did it. It's reasonable to say that's what Yaakov Avinu did. Okay. But here's the problem. He brings an example of Moshe Rabbeinu according honor to royalty from the very last time he goes to speak to Paro, at the end of the 10th plague. He said, your slaves are going to come down to me, and he meant you're going to come down to me. Why did Rashi wait till Parshas Bo to bring a proof that Moshe Rabbeinu spoke respectfully to Paro? Here it is. That's the last time. This is the first time, the very first time you see that Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron spoke respectfully to Paro. They didn't want to say directly, Hashem's going to strike you. Same type of thing. They used the euphemism, Hashem's going to strike us, but we all know we mean Hashem's going to strike you. So, all right. So why does Rashi skip the first place? And he goes and he brings his proof to from the second place. So, in order to answer that question, I'll ask a few more questions. Parshas Va'era. It begins with Hashem telling Moshe the Arba Lashonos of Geula. Don't worry. Maybe things have gotten harder in the short run. In the long run, everything's going to be fine. I'm going to redeem you. I'm going to take you to Eretz Yisrael. And after that speech from Hashem to Moshe Rabbeinu, it says, Pasuk Yud Gimel. Well, no, first Hashem says to Moshe Rabbeinu, go speak to Paro, and Moshe Rabbeinu says, yeah, but I have a speech defect. And then Hashem says the following, Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aharon, Hashem, Perek Vav, Pasuk Yud Gimel, right before Sheni in Va'era. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe ve'el Aharon, Hashem said to Moshe ve'Aaron, he spoke to Moshe and Aaron, and Rashi says, I'm not going to read the Rashi, that's Hashem's answer to Moshe Rabbeinu's complaint. I have a speech defect. Well, Hashem says, it's not just you, it's Aharon. He'll be your spokesman. But then the pasuk goes on to say, by Tzaveim el Bnei Yisrael, he gave them a command regarding the Jewish people, ve'el Paro melech Mitzrayim, and regarding Paro melech Mitzrayim, Lahotzias b'nei Yisrael me'eretz Yisrael, to take the Jewish people out of Eretz Yisrael. There's a command. The broad subject is Yitzias Mitzrayim, but there's an aspect of the commandment to the Bnei Israel, and there's an aspect of the commandment to Paro. So let's see how Rashi explains the two aspects of the commandment. The second Rashi on this pasuk. Vayitzavim el Bnei Yisrael. He commanded them regarding the Bnei Yisrael. Sivam alehem lahanhigam benachas. He commanded them to lead them gently. V'lisbolosam, and to put up with them, to have patience for them. So that's the command with the Bnei Yisrael. Be patient, be gentle. The El Paro Melech Mitzrayim, and there's another aspect of the commandment that's to Paro. Sivam alav, Hashem commanded them regarding Paro, lachlok lo kavod b'divreihem, to accord him honor in their words to him. This Rashi is so difficult. Remember, this is after Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron first went to Paro and said, we want 3 days to celebrate. And Paro says, you people are lazy. You're not going anywhere. In fact, I'm not going to supply you with straw anymore. And after that, Moshe Rabbeinu said, Hashem, you made things worse. And Hashem said, no, everything's going to be fine. And then comes this. This is after look at the order. The very first time Moshe and Aaron went to Paro, without any prompting, without any commands, Rashi makes a point. He notices they went out of their way to speak respectfully to Paro. Now, after they've done it on their own, Hashem commands them, speak respectfully to Paro. It makes no sense. If Hashem thought they needed to be commanded, he should have told them before they went the first time. But guess what? They didn't need to be commanded. On their own, they made a point of speaking respectfully to Paro. And then Hashem commands them, speak respectfully to Paro. It makes no sense. It makes no sense. There's no room for this commandment here. So we'll answer that by raising another question. So right after this pasuk, we have a break in the narrative of the story of Yetzias Mitzrayim, and we have a whole family tree of the tribes of Reuven, Shimon, and Levi, down to Moshe, Aaron, and Miriam. And then we resume the story of the 10 plagues. And Rashi deals with this question. I'm not going to read it inside. Rashi deals with this question. It's a question that everybody has to ask. What's this family tree doing in the middle of the story of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim? And he answers, since the pasuk mentioned Moshe and Aaron, I'll read the word already. I'm not going to go through the whole Rashi, but look at the Rashi on pasuk Yudalad. First words of the Rashi. Mitoch sheuzkak liyaches shifto shel Levi ad Moshe v'Aaron, since the pasuk had to. Now look at before that. The middle of the preceding Rashi on pasuk Gimel. Alamitoch sheyizkir Moshe v'Aaron, since the pasuk mentions Moshe and Aaron, hifsik be'ela Rashi beis abosam. It made a interruption of the story with the list of the family trees. L'lamdenu, to teach us heich noldu Moshe v'Aaron, how Moshe and Aaron were born, ubaminis yachsu, and who they trace their ancestry towards to. Since the pasuk mentions Moshe and Aaron, we have to know their ancestry. But Moshe and Aaron have been with us for a whole parsha already. Why, right now? I don't understand what it means. You mention them, you have to know their ancestry. That itself requires explanation. But if it's true, this family tree should have appeared long ago. Moshe Rabbeinu, we're familiar with Moshe Rabbeinu already. Why now do you have to get into their family tree? So the Or HaChaim HaKadosh and the Brisker Rov both give the same answer. You have to give a family tree for a halachic reason. When a person is appointed to a position of authority among the Jewish people, they have to have impeccable yichus. There can't be any mamzerus, and there's even a question about gerus for a person in a position of high authority among the Jewish people. Right? That's why there was a big problem about Rus. Okay, but the rule is and they say the Orach Chaim and the Riskarov that it was at this point where Moshe and Aaron not only were they prophets, but they became the temporal leaders of the Jewish people. They became like kings. Now that they're mentioned as kings, leaders of the Jewish people, not just religious people, leaders, but people who govern the Jewish people, we have to know their yichus. And if you really, Rashi says it, but people, I can understand why people don't notice it. Let's look at one of the Rashis I read to you on Pasuk Yud Gimel. Pasuk Yud Gimel says Hashem commanded Moshe and Aaron regarding the Jewish people and regarding Paro, and it's vague as to what the command is. But let's look at Rashi's Lashon on Vayetzavim el Bnei Yisrael. He commanded them to the Bnei Yisrael. What command? Tzivam alehem lahanigam benachas. He commanded them to lead them gently. So everybody gets hung up on the gently. But there's something before that. He commanded them to lead them. This is where they become leaders. Ah, you're a leader? We got to know your yichus. Okay. Now all of our earlier questions are answered. Why did Hashem command them now to speak respectfully to Paro when they've already proven themselves without any commands? They did it on their own. Well, of course they did it on their own. At the first time they went to Paro, Paro was their king. Your own king? It's obvious that you have to speak to him respectfully. Now that Paro is no longer the king of the Jewish people, Moshe and Aaron are the leaders of the Jewish people. They have, I think, Dinei Melech, right? And so you might think, Paro, he's just a goy. I don't have to show him any special respect. He's not my king anymore. Hashem says, no, the office of king, the position of a king, even if he has no authority over you, he's a king, he's a man with authority over his people, you must show respect. That's the way society works, not just for the Jewish people, for anybody. You must show a king respect. Oh, so now let's go back to Yaakov Avinu. We asked Yaakov Avinu, why did he exert himself? He had to show respect to Yosef because he was a king. Was Yosef Yaakov Avinu's king? They weren't citizens in Egypt. They were guests in Egypt. And if you look in Midrashim, among the brothers, to the extent that there was a Jewish people, the king was Yehuda. Yosef was not Yaakov Avinu's king. So Yaakov Avinu was exerting himself to show respect to a king who had no authority over him. So I asked, well, if you're going to use Moshe Rabbeinu as a precedent, use him the first time. No, the first time doesn't work. Then Moshe Rabbeinu was showing respect to his own king. That's not Yaakov Avinu's situation. Yaakov Avinu was showing respect to the second in command of the Egyptians. If you want to show a precedent for Moshe Rabbeinu, you have to go to the second example, when Moshe Rabbeinu is no longer a subject of Paro, but he says, your slaves are going to come begging, because he does. Paro is a king, not his king, a king. You have to show respect to a king, even if he is not your king. And now, just to finish off, well, what about Eliyahu? If what I'm saying is correct, it only makes sense if Eliyahu is not a subject of Achav. Was Eliyahu a subject of Achav or not? Well, the Medrash says, it's his machlokus, what tribe Eliyahu belonged to. One opinion in the Medrash says he was from the tribe of Binyamin, and another says he was from the tribe of Gad. Now, if he's from the tribe of Binyamin, he is not a subject of Achav. The Binyamin was subservient to the king Malchus Beis Yehuda, not to the northern kingdom, which was always from Yosef. So, if according to the opinion that Eliyahu was from the tribe of Binyamin, you have an example of somebody showing respect to a king who's not his own king. But that's a very weak example because maybe Eliyahu is from the tribe of Gad, in which case Achav is his king. So, according to what I'm saying, that's irrelevant to what's happening between Yosef and Yaakov Avinu, right? I mean, so I want to suggest that there's a different reason why Rashi brings the example of Eliyahu. And it teaches us something, even if Eliyahu was a subject of Achav. You know what that is? All the examples from Moshe Rabbeinu, you see that you have to speak respectfully to a king. And in fact, in one of the places Rashi says, Chilkulahem lo kavod b'divreihem. They accorded honor through their words. How do I know that there's an inyan at all of making physical gestures to or exerting strength to honor a king? How do I know that's included? For that, you need Eliyahu. Eliyahu, his obligation to honor Achav, maybe he was a subject of Achav, the most obvious thing in the world. But how do you know that honoring a king includes physical exertion? That you learn from Eliyahu. He ran ahead of the chariot. That's one of the ways you show honor to a king. Okay. So have a good week and Mr. Shem, same time, same place.